Hopefully we'll get that far. But first of all, I want to thank everybody for letting me do this summer series, and everybody who's participated in this summer series. It's been great. So we got this week, and then we got next week, and Brother Zach's going to take care of next week because Andrea and I and Samuel are going to be out of town. My thought was I want to do the very last one about working because it's right before Labor Day. Trying to be sneaky there. But if I don't finish this one, we'll come back and finish it because we're going to kind of jump back into our, for lack of better words, character studies, figure studies of obscure people. The more obscure, the better. Nehemiah, I didn't really want to do it on him because we know something about him. But there's so much good stuff on this guy. Let me start with a little example. There was a letter that was written to a church in 1943. They were doing some work in Europe, I believe this was. Anyway, I'll just read this letter that was written from one church to another. This wasn't necessarily in the Lord's church, but in the greater part of Christendom. I'll just read it here. In 1943, a young Jewish mother trapped in the ghettos of Poland placed her infant son in the arms of a childless Catholic neighbor lady and begged her to save the tiny son's life. When the neighbor hesitated, the desperate mother persisted. "You believe in Jesus, who was a Jew, so try to save this Jewish baby for the Jew in whom you believe. And one day maybe he will grow up to be a priest." And shocked at the thought of a Jew becoming a Catholic priest, the Polish neighbor nevertheless took the baby into her home. The Jewish mother and the rest of her family perished in the Nazi death camps. 35 years later, Father Winksler stood by the side of his dying Polish mother only to hear her deathbed confession of his true Jewish heritage. When the mother and his adopted parents had acted out of love, Father Winksler was nonetheless stunned and confused. His entire occupation was now based on a completely false understanding of his true identity. Imagine the trauma of this man's heart and mind. He no longer knows which version of God he must relate to. Is he the God of the Jew, or is he the God of the Roman Church? And he now no longer knows whom he should be for God, how he should serve God. And the letter went on to tell how this young man appealed to the Pope to ask to resolve his personal moral dilemma and an identity crisis. And the letter ends, "Pray for us as we lead many of the hopeless people here to discover their true identity in Jesus Christ. Their only hope is to appeal to their true great high priest, Jesus Christ." So you can imagine being in this guy's shoes. His entire world's been turned upside down, and this. When we had the can't remember the not pace setters, the sojourners, when they were here, and telling about conversion stories, and some of the folks who had found the Lord through the church, or found God through Jesus, and how their faith was shocked. It says it's somewhat saddening to see them in such a sad shape, but now they know the truth and the Jesus and the gospel of the New Testament and what they truly should do. But still, it's bad to see somebody in a bad shape like that, but good in a way that they have. You see what I'm getting at. This is kind of the case where Nehemiah was. Let's look at his situation there. So we can turn to Nehemiah chapter 1. Primarily our study was going to be on chapter 3, but there's something neat about Nehemiah. We'll just read verse 1. "The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, And it came to pass in the month Chislew in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace." We'll stop there. Here's nothing out of the ordinary for this guy. Normally we read Paul an apostle of Jesus Christ, or in all the introductions that they will place about a person is there in that heading. But here we don't read a whole lot about Nehemiah here. He's got a good job. The things we do know about him: he's got a good job, he's got a steady income, he's got respect, nothing unusual. But something jarred his world one day. It reminded him of who he truly was, like that example we read. The rest of the book reveals about this ordinary person who is made an extraordinary person by the power of God. So, this is a open discussion. This is not a teaching thing, so please jump in there. Brothers, why do we buy... Okay, no. Okay, one, we know why we buy jewelry for our wives. But why does jewelry always come in a little bitty black box?
It's all in the packaging.
Yes. Yeah, small packaging. But, okay, so when... Yeah. Yeah. That was another prop I meant to bring. Nehemiah, the cupbearer. What you got, Aaron?
Because white signifies like pureness.
Not exactly what I'm looking for. What you got?
Because all the work is inside.
Because it's what?
All the work is inside.
Well, yeah, all the worth is inside, but the key that I'm looking for is the little box is black, and it's usually satin and sometimes fuzzy. Why would you not get a diamond ring or diamond earrings and put it in a cardboard box?
The packaging kind of protects it. It's soft.
You're close. What you got, Brother Burl? Mickey? The idea is, yeah, it's valuable, but the idea is that I wouldn't want to deliver it in a cardboard box or even a nice wood box, even of mahogany. You want to put it on a black background so that it sparkles even shinier. Yeah, so it's gonna be shiny and sparkly, but you put it up against a black background and it dazzles even more brilliantly. That same setting is what's happening here and helps Nehemiah, an ordinary guy, stand out like a diamond. He's an ordinary guy because what we read about, we'll get to that here in just a second. Against the black background, his brilliance shines even brighter. Zerubbabel and Ezra, remember them? Okay. They said it can't be done. So you put yourself in the Old Testament there. Israel has been carried off into captivity. And they're over in Babylon for 70 years. 70 years, that's a lifetime. That's old enough for even the oldest guys to have been infants when they were taken away. So nobody truly remembers their homeland, their heritage there. So Zerubbabel tried to lead the rest of the nation and they failed. Sorry, I'll put that. Okay. The mic is right here. I was dragging it over that. My apologies. So Darius let Ezra go out and try, but he didn't quite finish it up either. They left without getting the Jews back to their homeland. Now, imagine yourself there in Nehemiah's shoes. He's got a decent job. He's the king's cupbearer. So I imagine that's probably got to be like a butler. He's on up there. He's got connections there to the king. And
He's a civil servant. He's a high-level GS type of guy.
indeed.
High level, really.
Yeah, he's a civil servant. That's probably a good way to put it. So he probably hears a few extra things that maybe go along to the king, and so he's there. You read chapter 1, and it's pretty bleak. It said, well, he goes on to say where he's sad and how he'd never been sad in the presence of the king, and the king looks and says, "Look, you're sad. What's going on? I mean, this is nothing but sadness of the heart. I can see you're hurting. What's going on?" You want to tell me about it? And then that's um, when Nehemiah tells him, it's like, yeah, I got word that Jerusalem's still in ruins. Maybe it's the word that Ezra couldn't get the job done. And it's sinking in that we're just demoralized. The Jewish nation is just heartbroken. We're not going to get this thing done. So the hopes are crushed. And so the setting in the introduction there is it's a mixture of grief and complacency. This can't be done. That is the black background that this little diamond is going to come in. So Psalm 137, we read verses 1 through 6 here. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Upon the willows in the midst of it we hung our harps, for there our captives demanded of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget her skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not exalt Jerusalem above my chief joy. So even now, when they're allowed to rebuild and return, their enemies were numerous, and the task is impossible. And who's going to be our champion for the world?
There's a European group that has put that in the song, and it is a really good song. Says those same words. You put that
Okay.
the lead sentence on it, and on Google, look it up and bring them up, and they have really done a really good job on it.
Okay, make sure I caught that right. The words right here of Psalm 137, 1 through 6. It's a European group that has sung this
Yes.
to a tune. I'm going to look that up. Thank you. So, everybody catch that? Okay, there's a Psalm 137, verses 1 through 6. There's a group in Europe that has put these words to a tune. And it's, I guess, out there on YouTube or whatever site.
Yeah.
Probably find it. You happen to remember the name of them?
They're a black group, but they're really good.
Okay, so we'll look it up. We'll try to find that. But getting back to this guy, you got this guy Nehemiah. He's the one who says, we can do it. I think we can do it. So he's an ordinary man. What's interesting here is what's not said about him. I started getting ahead of myself there a little bit. Verse 1, normally you've got a big introduction of a person, but what's not said about him speaks a lot right here. He's the son of Hakaliah. This is the only time where Hakaliah is mentioned in the Bible. So, who's Hakaliah? We don't know. This is the only time he's ever mentioned there. He's not a Levite, so he's not of the priestly tribe. He does not have any royal blood. He does not have any rich heritage. He's probably got no physical strength to speak of. He's not a Samson. Another way of saying it is he's just an ordinary guy. There's nothing super special about him. He's so on the value of the entire book of Nehemiah there. If you read it, it's a timeless example of how God can take a nobody and turn him into somebody special. Doesn't matter if this guy didn't care if he got the credit or not. Credit all belongs to God ultimately. And it's an example of who or she can become if they belong to God. Second big thing about the book is this is a book of no excuses. If God can use you, if God can use Nehemiah, he can use you. He can use me. He can use all of us. And no excuse is going to be good enough. So there's always a moment for a new Nehemiah out there. There's people that are broken. Just like the walls of Jerusalem were broken, people are broken. People are suffering. Burned gates are everywhere. We read how the Jerusalem the gates were burned, and they went in and rebuilt it. Values lie shattered, morals are eroded, and truth is being questioned or subjugated. Every generation needs a rebuilder. And the sad thing is that we have lost sight of oh, thank you, Paul. I forgot I had that up there. We'll get into a couple of other slides here in a minute, but every generation there needs a rebuilder, and sadly we put the emphasis on the person now and what they may be famous for, be it social media or politics or movie star or whatever, but all the things that don't matter, and all the things that made Nehemiah great, or none of those things are what we focus on as a society now, in the 21st century, or you can put any century. Mankind has always been like this. Go ahead, Brother Ed.
I was going to say that you were talking about that song about Rivers of Babylon, Psalm 137, and I just looked it up, and it's very interesting. Just a quick scan. Sorry about that. But you know that song, Rivers of Babylon, that was written in the UK, a British group. They were kind of a Jamaican off branch, but they, and then another group, the Birds, in 1966, had a song, Turn, Turn, Turn.
Straight out of
played on
Ecclesiastes. Yeah.
So this said it was, interesting and sort of ironic that both of these songs from Scripture were written not by Christians. They were written by non-Christians based on the Bible. And so that gained traction, so that made these songs actually a hit. And then it goes into the history of the Rivers of Babylon in particular, going way back and pointing this out. So it is an interesting thing that. So
Neat. Okay, Rivers of Babylon is the name of the song. That's,
I don't know if that's the same one that you all talking about. Just a moment ago.
okay,
Right.
I'm writing that down. Rivers of Babylon, which makes sense. Jamaica, UK. In Jamaica, they speak with a pretty thick British accent. And they drive on the wrong side of the road. Jamaica's awesome, but don't dare try to drive there. It's. We went to visit. It's crazy.
Yeah, the video is really good to watch too. They've done a video of it.
Was that?
The video is worth watching.
The video. Okay, yeah, the video of that song is worth watching. Okay. But yeah, so the bottom line, the one word, if you could sum up everything that you truly need in a leader, we just discussed it for Vacation Bible School up in, it was all on these walls. Great job too, by the way. If you could sum up all those values that we want to see in a leader, is character. And that's what it boils down to. And so the key to an ordinary person turning them into somebody extraordinary is character. Well, Mickey, yes, sir.
What I get out of that is the way Nehemiah organized it to get so many different groups of people to rebuild.
Yeah. Great organizational skills. That's not my forte. But yeah, having that organization is great. Jeremiah 5:1 says, roam to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem, and look now and take note, and seek in her open squares if you can find a man, if there is one who does justice, who seeks the truth. Ezekiel 22 verse 40 says, and I searched for a man among them who should build up the wall and stand in the gap before me, but I found no one. So, Christendom, in the overall word, is always trying to bring in more folks. It's not just the Lord's church. You can look at any of the other ones out there, and they're trying to bring in more folks. And you look at any of the various ways that we're trying to, we folks are trying to bring folks in. And it's all the wrong things. When ultimately it's just about the Word of God. That's strong enough to convict a person's heart. Thing is, God is going to impact the world with Christian character. So while the church is looking for better methods, God is looking for better men. Those are not my words. Those are the words from Mr. Stephen Davey, who I kind of base this off of loosely. He's a Baptist preacher, so you got to watch some of the stuff, but overall, he's got a lot of great wisdom into the Word. So the folks living at the same time as Nehemiah may have heard of a couple of these guys. Herodotus, I had not. He was writing a history of the world and everything going on up to that point. So we've got some of the records from antiquity outside of the Bible from this guy named Herodotus. Two other guys, Plato and Socrates. Socrates. They were living in the same time. They were in the same time. So why not, Lord, why not use one of them? They're influential. Everybody knows them. But God says he's not looking after that. He looks after the heart. He was looking for Nehemiah. Because God does not always choose the many who are mighty or the many who are noble. He uses the ordinary who through him can move the world. There's 26 characteristics brought up about Nehemiah from a whole bunch of different sources. And this guy put them all together in this one spot. 26 characteristics of Nehemiah, of ordinary people, and how God can use them in extraordinary ways. Number one, he was compassionate. That was, I think, that wall right there for our vacation Bible school. 2, he prayed. There's 11 prayers in this book. 3, he knew the Old Testament scriptures. 4, he had a definite goal. Number 5, when something had to be done, he went directly to the person who could do something about it. Man, I wish I could do that so much at work. With my job, we have a lot of red tape, and there are some things that I wish I know exactly how to fix it, but we have to get permission. This guy knew how to get things done. Number 6, he depended on God. 7, he knew for what to ask. 8, he sized up the job before he started the work. 9, he knew how to delegate work. 10, he knew how to delegate responsibly. 11, did it again. 11, he did not let opposition from those on the outside stop him. And 12, he knew how to settle differences among people. 13, he was an example of his own message. 14, he was a man of keen discernment. 15, he did not let personal criticism stop him. 16, he did not excuse wrongdoing regardless of who did it. 17, he had respect for authority. 18, he gave God the credit for his accomplishments. 19, he put the emphasis on spiritual life. 20, he required a higher standard for those in spiritual leadership. 21, he refused to accommodate sin even when sinful behavior had become culturally acceptable. 22, he took his personal distress and hurt straight to God. 23, he was willing to suffer injustice for the sake of God's work. 24, he stayed focused on the goal and did not succumb to the dangers, the risks, the obstacles, and the hardships that stood in his way. 25, he had moral strength and courage when everybody else did not. And number 26, he did not give up when everyone else around him had. These are characteristics that are easy to observe and easy to understand, but ultimately you put them all together, they're almost impossible to apply. But he did it. If you've got an open, honest, vital relationship with God, you can do it. And maybe that's the reason why this book it begins with Nehemiah being down. He's essentially on his knees. And Um, but we'll come back to the application here in just a minute. But I want to talk about a couple of these pictures. And the part I was really wanting to get into, but I don't think we're going to have enough time, about rebuilding Nehemiah's wall and all the people that were involved with it. Give me the next slide there, please, sir, Paul. We'll go into a little bit of the architectural stuff. Archaeological, my apologies. So that is an actual picture. You can probably barely make out the little white thing with gray below it. That's a person. That is a lady standing up on this wall. So we're back up to 2007. There was a particular tower set up. Give me one more slide there, sir. I know it's impossible to see because I can barely see that one back there, but you can see those little lines there towards the middle, how they kind of come together. Well, that's kind of supposed to be an overhead shot of where the stones are stacked. 2007, there's this tower there. There were 3 major towers in this little section, and they called this one the Northern Tower, and it was about ready to topple over. So they went in, they were like, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to dig out around the foundation for it. We're going to shore it up and make it sound. And they said, okay, well, this tower has been built in the, I think a long time ago. I forget the exact date. And what they found out was like, wait a second, there's layers of stuff under here. And so they started digging a little bit deeper, and so they realized what they had discovered. So what they were going to do is they were going to dismantle the whole tower, take it apart, label each one of the stones, set them aside, rebuild it all, and put it back together. But then they realized that the whole foundation was built not very good. It was built on this wall, and it wasn't fully able to support it because they had also done all these other archaeological excavations in the 1920s and so forth. Well, they didn't dig that deep. Anyway, they found out that, wait a second, getting into this stuff, there's influences of Persian stuff going on up in here because of some of the things that they found. This is like 5 feet deep and then they realized that, okay, well, they were really surprised when they found 2 dogs buried there. What did the Jews not have? Dogs. In fact, I think it's in Revelation somewhere. I should have looked it up where it said, we're talking about in the New Zion, and the dogs are outside the gates. Well, because they didn't like dogs. And we're also in the case of the rich man and Lazarus. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his wounds. Dogs were considered scum. I love my Max. He's a good dog. He was bad, but he's turned into a really good dog now. But the Israelites, the Jewish people, didn't like dogs. So where did these dogs come from? The Persians. And also they've done some other studying and found that other dog burials in Israel were of that same Persian time, so it had to be from that. The absence of some of the other materials that they found in there too. And sorry, I can't find my notes, so I'm digging off of the originals that I found here. They found things there. They've got, I guess, little symbols of like the name of the town that they would normally expect to see carried out in the trash and filling in for a wall material. Normally you'll see little symbols. This one would have Yehud. That was the name of Judah during the time they didn't find him in there. What you got, sir?
So you're saying the Persians originally built the wall?
What was that?
So you're saying the Persians originally built the wall before it became...
That's well, during the Persian time. So imagine what's happening here is that where did Nehemiah come from? Persia. They came back from Persia and they built it using rebuilt this wall using the technology and the applications that they had at the time, which were
Nehemiah tried to save things, went to Persia, was building walls, came back, built walls.
yeah. So they came back to ruins of this town and they're trying to rebuild the wall quickly. All right. Okay. Also, you read in. We'll read into part of the biblical account. So, if you the biblical account is not unsurprising at all. But what they found was very surprising. They're like, wait a second. There's all kinds of weird stuff here. There's a layer of Persian stuff we didn't expect. Well, if you read the account of Nehemiah, it makes perfect sense. And also, they noticed that some of these stones put together in this wall were put together really, really quickly. And it's like they almost didn't know what they were doing. Well, why would that be an account? We're going to jump into some of the stuff. We won't be able to finish it all. But I think we got time. Jumping into how everybody counts. There's lessons from an Old Testament construction site here. You've got, where is this particular one? Some of the people did not necessarily know how to work. Read verses 8 and 9 of Nehemiah chapter 3. Uzziel, the son of Hariah of the goldsmiths, made repairs. And next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, made repairs. And they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. And next to them, Rephaiah, the son of Hur, the official of half the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. Give me the next slide there, please, Sir Paul. So if you look at the entire wall, I know you can't see it, but it's this odd little shape. There's you might be able to make out the little bitty dotted line. That was the path that Nehemiah traveled, kind of on that western side, down to the south and then back up. And he noticed that everything was all destroyed. The thing we want to point out right here is you've got a politician, a goldsmith, and a perfumer. They're laying bricks. Get back to this archaeological account. It says this thing was done pretty quickly and probably by folks who didn't exactly know what they were doing. So the archaeological stuff there, it's tying straight into the biblical account. The person who doesn't know how, doesn't matter if he doesn't know how, he can get somebody to teach him. But what does a guy who makes perfume know about laying brick? I'd say negative knowledge. Same guy with a jeweler and a politician. So, another thing that we wanted to bring out here is that the first group of workers that's mentioned there, verse 1. Then Eliashib, the high priest, arose with his brothers, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They consecrated the wall to the tower of the 112 of Phaneal. So these walls were on the western side. They're over there on you maybe see that valley gate, but they're over there. There's so much significance in that it brings up goosebumps almost. So on this western side, the sheep gate, well, I don't actually see it up there, but the sheep gate is where they would bring in the sheep for the sacrifices. So, okay, who did the sacrifices? The high priests. They were the ones who rebuilt this wall, this gate. And how could they have known, one, well, this is holy ground to them, but how could they have known that about 400 years later that Jesus himself was probably going to walk through that reconstructed gate and go pray in the garden nearby named Gethsemane. And when they brought him back in, he was probably going to come back in that same gate that the sheep came through. Priests don't work with hammers and stone, but here they did, and they set the example for the rest of the people. That's why they were called out first. Go ahead, Mickey. You can bring us on in. I'm wrapping it up. We can. There's at least 3-4 more examples are here. Let me hit one more. Some people were able to do more. Verses 11, 19, 21, 24, 27 to 30. You've got the interesting phrase repeated that they repaired another section. They did what they were supposed to do, and then they went on and did a little bit more. Fourth characteristic that we read of the people is that they were willing to put in more work in difficult places than others. Verse 14, Malchijah, the son of Rechab, the official of the district of Beth-Haranim, who repaired the refuse gate. The refuse gate, there at the bottom, can be translated the dung gate. It's where they carried out all the unmentionables, all the nasty stuff. Went out that gate, but that's where they worked. It wasn't pretty. It probably smelled bad, but they did it anyway. Compare this to the location of the next verse. Shallum, the son of Kol-Hosea, the official of the district of Mizpah, repaired the fountain gate. He built it, covered it, and hung its doors and its bolts and its bars in the wall of the pool of Shalem at the king's gate, as far as the steps that descend down from the city of David. In other words, you've got the official who willingly works near the garbage dump, and another who gets to work by the pool near the king's flower gardens. So some were able to put in more work in difficult places than others. And some of the people were willing to work. Number 5. I think this. No, we got one more, 2 more. But after him, Baruch, the son of Zebai, zealously repaired another section from the angle to the doorway of the house of Eliashib, the high priest. And this is the only person whose attitude or spirit Nehemiah mentions anything about. The Hebrew word translated zealously comes from a word that means to burn or to glow. And there's several other cases here. We won't be able to get into all of them because we're just out of time. But all these people were willing to work. And ultimately, all these people putting in the work is a beautiful example of what the church ought to be. So we are, the church has got 2 things. We're called out of the world, but we're called to go back into the world. We're all called members of one body, and that's exactly what these people did. We've got some that are our hands and feet. We've got the internal organs that we don't see, the things that go along in the background. But every piece is important. Just like every member of this team who put together these, who rebuilt the wall here in 52 days. Oddly enough, that archaeological study, from when they first started digging stuff up to when they found that this is Nehemiah's wall, took about 52 days. But ultimately, each of us has a place at the wall. If we're sitting there, go ahead, Brother Ed.
No,
Yeah, if we're sitting there with the enemy in sight, lading our stuff with one hand, trowel in one hand, and a sword in the other, ready to go, we're still doing what we ought to do.
Peter says that we're living stones being built up into a holy temple. So living versus dead stones, inanimate objects, kept people from coming. Those stones kept people from coming into the city.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fortress, fortified.
Yeah.
We're living stones. We have a purpose, and just as Nehemiah and the people had a mind to work, and it says that God helped them. When we have a mind to work together, God can do great things.
Yeah, we've got that mind of work that Nehemiah had there. That's what it's all about. I think I had one more slide, but I think it's just another map of. Yeah, it's another map. It's even harder to see. But also, I can't help but mention the folks that they gave him a hard time. Sennacherib and who's the other guy that mocked him, said that, hey, even a fox could knock those stones down. It's kind of interesting they found 2 dead dogs underneath that pile of rubble too. Interesting thing. But the bottom line is that we're talking about Nehemiah, the man. Everything was about the walls of Jerusalem was in ruins there. So first, what is it in each one of our own lives that lies in ruins now? What can be restored? What is it that needs repairing? What needs restoration and rebuilding? God can repair it. He can do it. Secondly, what is about our lives that's worth reading about tomorrow? Is there anything worth recording? Is there anything ordinary or anything extraordinary? But even in the ordinary things, just faithfulness and submission to God is revealed there. Nehemiah was an ordinary guy. Nothing odd to say about him. He was an ordinary guy, but he did extraordinary things when he devoted his life there to God. And that itself is worth reading about. And Teddy Roosevelt, he was a very hard-charging leader. He was either hated or admired. But one admirer said to him, "Mr. Roosevelt, you are a great man, but with great honesty, great characteristic honesty." He said, "No, Teddy Roosevelt is simply a plain, ordinary man who's highly motivated." And that's what we need today. It's just plain, ordinary folks, plain, ordinary people who are highly motivated by the Spirit of God to advance His church and to honor His name. And we gather here on Wednesday nights and Sunday nights to learn a little bit more about what's in this Word. We always offer the invitation. Not my invitation. It's the Lord's invitation. Every time we meet, in case anyone is subject to the gospel call, we want to do that. Offer that here in just a second. But there is any